Let's get straight to it. The top story, this corruption finding against Gladys Berejiklian. I bring in my colleague, our political editor, Andrew Clennell. And Andrew, I'm intrigued by the way all of this is being managed today by the politicians on Macquarie Street. They're walking on eggshells, the way they're responding to a very clear finding from ICAC that says Gladys Berejiklian engaged in serious corrupt conduct. You've had the opposition leader today talking about denouncing Daryl Maguire, but scratching his head over the fact of this finding that Gladys Berejiklian breached Section 11 of the ICAC Act, that she did have suspicions, but didn't pass them on, Andrew.
Well, the report effectively finds that Gladys Berejiklian covered up for a corrupt man. I mean, let's just put it that bluntly. I think it was the Shadow Attorney General, Alistair Henskens, who said scratching heads there, and Mark Speakman, the opposition leader, is saying she's worked very hard. Just the last minute, we've had a tweet from a Channel 7 reporter of a statement from Gladys Berejiklian, which says, and I quote, "At all times I've worked my hardest in the public interest. Nothing in this report demonstrates otherwise. The report is currently being examined by my legal team. She'll seek to appeal the finding, but she might find it tough given how emphatic these findings are." And frankly, the attitude that Gladys Berejiklian has taken the whole time here, Kieran, that she's somehow above the law, including in submissions, she said, because I'm the Premier, I didn't have to abide by the Ministerial Code of Conduct. Nothing surprises me from her reaction there. She has never admitted fault once in this saga, even though ICAC has found she acted corruptly in covering up for her then boyfriend and not reporting what she knew to ICAC. This is the moment in 2020 which spelled the end of Gladys Berejiklian's political career. Not everyone got it at the time, but it was pretty self-evident if you had any understanding of the way that ICAC works in New South Wales politics. Section 11 of the ICAC Act is clear. It is something all politicians, all staffers and all media should know, and that is that public officials must report suspicion of corrupt conduct. That's why New South Wales has an ICAC. That's why it's not going back to the days of brown paper bags. At least we hope it's not. On occasion, it does. Here are the phone taps that got Gladys.
Yeah, I've been doing my books, my accounts.
Yeah.
Counting my tax refund.
Good.
That's excellent.
Given the size of it, it'll take you all week to count it all.
It's true. And the good news is William tells me we've done our deal. So hopefully that's about half of all that gone now.
That's good. I don't need to know about that bit.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
You do not.
Without a pandemic, she may have had to resign in 2020. With that going on, she was able to present herself as the person who was saving New South Wales. Only she, as Premier, could do the right thing by New South Wales. She wasn't alone in that. Every Premier in the country was behaving in that fashion. But she had really large popularity at the time. It seemed ICAC took a hit at her and didn't kill her off. They thought they were going to. So they initiated an inquiry into her and they found a lot more. But it's this moment that sticks with me from 2020. It's almost like in this exchange that Gladys Berejiklian knows deep down she's in so much trouble. She even called me Mr. Clennell. When he was talking about Badgerys Creek land deals, I don't need to know that bit.
Mr. Clennell, I reject that assumption strongly. I've always acted in the best interest of the people of this state.
It's not about the personal, it's about the professional. Why didn't you pull up Daryl Maguire in any of these phone calls? Why didn't you report any of this behaviour? He was clearly lobbying for developers while you were Premier and he was a parliamentary secretary. Why didn't you act on this, Premier?
Well, look, that's all your opinion, Mr. Clennell.
It's in the evidence, Premier. And why didn't it raise alarm bells for you that he was lobbying for matters outside his electorate? It must have, Premier.
That at all times there was a clear distinction between my personal life and the way I conducted my public office.
I mentioned the purported statement from Ms Berejiklian before. I have to say that it appears she's somewhat delusional about the findings in this report, and it was always going to be the case. The report itself says Ms Berejiklian submitted to the Commission that as Premier, the Ministerial Code did not apply to her. It just seemed like she believed the law, the rules did not apply to her. And we saw that in 2018 after Daryl Maguire resigned after Operation Dasher. He was taking commissions from developers. It was shown on a phone tap at ICAC. Then she was duty-bound to go to ICAC as the Premier. She signed off on ministerial staffers going to ICAC to talk about what they knew about Daryl Maguire at the time. This exchange was just so brazen, daring others to go down there when she's not doing the job that she is required to do as the Premier of the state.
You do not require a motion from this place or the other place to refer a matter to ICAC. If he or anybody else has any issues of concern, I urge them to take it to Madam Speaker, I refer my call to every single member of this place. If you see or hear anything which is of concern, which you feel ICAC should investigate, refer it on the spot. Don't wait 3 or 4 weeks.
Now, Andrew, just to pick up on something that's generated a fair bit of coverage today, including by Chris Minns, the Premier, and that is a focus on the time it's taken. Fine, I get that, deal with that, but it's not. It doesn't seem to me to be a top order issue today when the ICAC has come back with this finding that the former Premier, as popular as she is or once was, engaged in serious corrupt conduct, and yet quite a few individuals, including the Premier walking on eggshells, talks about the length of time it's come up with this judgment. But surely when you talk about a watchdog of this nature, the key is transparency, the key is the truth. And if it takes 2 years, if it takes 3 or whatever, not ideal for those concerned, but the fundamental question is, have they got to the right outcome, Andrew? That's the key. And yet, as I said before, I really think looking at it from afar on Macquarie Street, a lot of people, including the Premier, are walking on eggshells in the way they're responding to a very clear finding from ICAC today.
I mean, it's almost like they're saying it's okay to be dodgy. I couldn't believe this from Chris Minns either. I think it's gutless. I don't think it's what he really believes either, by the way, but I think he sees the focus group saying there's a lot of sympathy for Gladys and he's thinking about his own political situation. The fact of the matter is that they shouldn't have reported too long. It is a bit of a disgrace, but because they did, she may have stayed at Optus for longer, frankly. We'll find out from Optus later today what's happening with Gladys Berejiklian. But he says, look, people should declare conflicts of interest. There's more to it than that here. She's been found to have acted corruptly. So really, I mean, the Premier, here he is.
Nothing in this report takes away, I don't think, from Premier Berejiklian's handling of the COVID emergency, which I still regard as being excellent. It's important, however, for all politicians in New South Wales and anyone in public life or positions of leadership to understand that we must manage conflicts of interest. That it's been 2 years since the public inquiry took place in Sydney, in New South Wales, for the findings to be released. And if you're an official or a public servant that is the subject of an inquiry, to hold your life effectively up for years and years is just too long. So if there are changes that we can make to the ICAC Act in a bipartisan way or multi-party way to strengthen accountability and community support for the independent agency, then we'll do that.
I mean, Gladys Berejiklian was pretty happy to enforce rules on all the citizens of New South Wales in terms of wearing masks, not going outside, etc. But when it came to rules that she and Mike Baird in their cabinet devised around ICAC, apparently she didn't have to obey them. She gets a leave pass because she managed things during the pandemic, according to these politicians. Here's Mark Speakman and Alastair Henskens, his Shadow Attorney General, earlier.
She was an outstanding Premier for New South Wales. She was an incredibly popular Premier because she worked her guts out for the people of New South Wales. And I can say, as an MP and as a Minister who observed her firsthand, she worked 24/7 for the people of New South Wales. We faced a 1 in 100 year pandemic. We faced the worst bushfires on record while Gladys was Premier, the worst drought on record, and she served the people of New South Wales magnificently through that time.
Many members of the public will be scratching their head wondering how someone can be found seriously corrupt in circumstances where it's not alleged that they've made any breach of the criminal law.
All right, here's that Gladys statement, by the way. Serving the people of New South Wales was an honour and privilege. At all times I've worked my hardest in the public interest. Nothing in this report demonstrates otherwise. Thank you to members of the public for their incredible support. This will sustain me always. The report is currently being examined by my legal team. Let's see if she does appeal to the Supreme Court the findings. Otherwise, she'll forever be labelled the corrupt former Premier, Gladys Berejiklian. But she believes, obviously, that she'll continue to have public support. No doubt she will. And in a lot of ways, Gladys Berejiklian, like so many of those pandemic politicians, got away with a hell of a lot more from a public perception point of view than would happen in normal times, Kieran.
And Andrew, this fascinating parallel between the politics, someone who remains a popular figure, the ICAC report with its clear findings, an outstanding Premier, Mark Speakman, says, ICAC says a corrupt Premier, and the New South Wales government, as you said, it was a weak response. I can't even get the Special Minister of State, his office, to get back to me on a day when ICAC has handed down a scathing, condemning report of one of their political predecessors. It is bizarre, Andrew.
Look, yeah. I mean, some of the reporting about this has had me shaking my head, and yeah, they're in La La Land down in Macquarie Street, that's for sure, but they're following the focus groups. It was interesting too, Kieran, that Mark Speakman did say a couple of things which weren't good for Gladys Berejiklian in that presser. He said, we have to have the highest standards. He said, you must declare conflicts of interest, and she didn't do that. But at the same time, he wanted to say how outstanding she was. That's more understandable from a Liberal than a Labor leader, I have to say, in this context. And I can only hope that Chris Minns upholds standards of integrity in his government, because his comments this morning were more about the watchdog than about the findings. And he ought to reflect hard on that, because I've seen plenty of governments go bad in New South Wales, and bad in a very big way. And I'd say after those comments, there's got to be a watch on this government and its integrity and how it deals with matters of integrity. And let's watch what these ICAC reforms do. I suspect they'll take Ministerial Code of Conduct out, which would have cleared her on the conflict of interest from a finding. But they will keep that Section 11 in. We have to report suspect corrupt conduct. So she would have been done anyway. She's been done since October 2020, and a lot of people have been in denial about it, and I wasn't one of them. I can say that, Kieran.
No, you weren't. Andrew Clennell, appreciate it.